So President Biden signed an executive order that overturned a Trump-era executive order that stopped people from investing their retirement funds in funds that are environmentally and socially responsible. And my reaction to that was, there really was a need for something like this? Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. I'm also a lawyer and an academic, and I'm here to help you stand up to the BS of the MAGA crowd. So as it turns out, a lot of my academic research is focused on the area of corporate social responsibility and how businesses engage with the community, engaged with government. The findings of the research in general are kind of interesting, and I'll give them to you in a nutshell, which is that, with few exceptions, businesses being involved in government activity is bad for business. On the other hand, businesses being socially responsible is good for business. The findings on both those counts are pretty robust, actually. And you can see the results of it, where more responsible businesses, or at least businesses that are perceived as more responsible, tend to be very successful. I mean, look at Costco, look at Patagonia, look at Target. And although there's still a big debate over why that's the case, in fact, I've actually written an article that was published in a journal on that subject. The bottom line is, it's pretty clear that being socially responsible is good for business. What's more is that a lot of people have thought, hey, you know, with my retirement funds, I'd like to have those retirement funds put in businesses that do things that I agree with, that are, for example, socially responsible and don't drill for oil or produce cigarettes or something like that. And in fact, there's become a whole industry that's grown up around that idea called ESG funds, or environmental, social, and governance funds, where they try to take into consideration not just the firm's performance, of course they do try to deliver good returns to the investors, but also want to make sure that the values of these investors are protected. So for a long time, I've thought that, hey, if people want to invest in those funds, they're probably allowed to. Well, as it turns out, the Trump administration had stood in the way of doing that, which is just bizarre to me. It doesn't make any sense. Why would they be against that? It's just one more example of how they have institutionalized hate and anger and just being against everything. Well, I guess now we can be thankful to the Biden administration for at least taking steps to get rid of that executive order, so that now people who want to invest their retirement funds into socially responsible firms are able to do that. Seems like a reasonable step. Well, not according to Fox News. Check out this video over here.
Americans from coast to coast waking up to more bad news, a new record high when it comes to the price of gas.
Well, that didn't age well, did it? Oh my gosh. You know what's funny is I've said to my wife the other day that if oil prices were right before the election what they are now, the Democrats would have won the House. And I think that's likely true. In fact, there's been quite a bit of research that has shown that there is a link between the price of gas and President Biden's approval rating, even though he has relatively little control over it. That's why, for example, he's granted a license to Chevron to actually start producing oil in Venezuela again. Something that I applaud, by the way, for a number of reasons. At any rate, these Republicans who hung their hat on things being bad because of the high price of gas, well, it's not looking so much that way anymore, is it? Let's keep watching.
Wow, here we go. July 4th is on July 4th. Vivek Ramaswamy will launch his brand new campaign to call out asset management firms that use money in retirement plans to actively lobby against the political beliefs of hardworking Americans. Maybe.
Okay, now he says he's starting an educational campaign. What's he doing? Well, he's starting his own fund. This is advertising for his own fund. He's basically trying to sell shares in a fund of his that, rather than engaging in socially responsible investing, is going to engage in socially irresponsible investing, which, by the way, research has shown pretty conclusively is bad for business. But what's more is I love how they say that these firms use the funds of hardworking Americans to lobby against their values. What about the values of all the people who are the majority, by the way, who support some type of progressive values, some type of liberal values, who support socially responsible business? That is actually the majority. And yet they don't care about those people at all, do they? Let's keep watching.
It's your plan. Strive Asset Management Executive Chairman and author of the upcoming book, Nation of Victims, Vivek Ramaswamy, joins us now. Vivek.
nation of victims. I mean, that's what the Republicans are all about is, oh, poor us. We're these white-skinned people who've benefited from privilege throughout the history of this country. And now other people are going to have access to that privilege as well. So we're victims now. Let's keep watching.
What are we finding out about what's happening with our plans that we don't even know about?
Well, here's the thing, Brian. Americans know that they're paying $5 for gas at the pump on average nationally right now.
Not so anymore. Let's keep watching.
What most of them don't know is that their investment accounts are being weaponized to actually create that result. Because what the world's largest asset managers are doing, starting with BlackRock, the biggest one, and you'll notice in that video there's a hand pushing a black rock up a hill, is that what happens is that they're using the money of everyday citizens to show up as the largest shareholders at companies like Exxon, at the U.S. energy companies across the natural gas sectors and the oil sectors, and to tell them to produce less. Why? To prepare for a green energy transition, but in ways that most people whose money they're investing would not want to actually see happen.
Okay. Let's stop right there. All right, for starters, part of the reason that the oil companies have been pushed by investors to produce less is because of the fact that the oil companies took a bath as a result of the COVID recession. Remember when nobody was driving and the price of oil dropped to below zero? Yeah, the oil companies had invested billions in producing new sources of energy, and as a result of that, they lost billions during that period. Well, now that the price of oil has come back, rather than producing more oil, what these oil companies have been doing is basically giving dividends to the shareholders or buying back shares, essentially giving money to the shareholders. That's what these funds are doing, is that they're lobbying for more money to come to them. They're not lobbying for these companies to produce less because of some type of woke agenda. They're lobbying for these companies to produce less so they can get more money. That's what these companies do. This is more of the politicization of everything in our culture. This guy's trying to start a fund of his own, and the way that he's trying to market it is by saying, hey, if you're against these progressives who care about the environment, well, invest in my fund. Even though the reason these other funds are pushing for less investment in oil production is because they want more money in their own pockets. Let's keep watching.
So that's a big abuse of the everyday citizens of this country and their investment accounts. That's the first step in, I think, educating the American people on how.
Let's also say this. In the long run, it's probably a good thing for these companies to invest in things other than just oil. It's pretty clear that oil is not the energy of the future. That would be like saying, hey, let's invest in coal right now. No, obviously they need to be looking for alternatives because in the not too distant future, we're going to be heading that direction. Let's keep watching.
We are actually empowered to drive this change, not just through the votes we cast every November, but through the votes we cast every day with where we invest our dollars.
Now, you see, I would agree with him, except for the fact that people who do want to see companies to be socially and environmentally responsible have been banned from doing so as a result of the actions of the Trump administration. I mean, if you want to invest your money in a company that pollutes in the environment and is socially irresponsible, have at it. That's your choice. Personally, I'd rather see my funds go to a company that not only is financially successful, but also, say, treats its employees well and takes care of the environment and is considerate of different kinds of people and supports the communities they operate in. That's my choice. If you don't want to do that, have at it. But as it turns out, the Trump administration was stopping me from doing that. They weren't stopping you from investing in crappy funds that treat everybody badly. They were stopping me from investing in funds that are socially responsible. So let's call this for what it is. It's a marketing tactic by a guy who's trying to start his own fund. Let's keep watching.
So, you're not talking about necessarily big-time Wall Street investors. You're talking about people that have retirement accounts, pension accounts, 401ks. You don't really think about where this is going, but you hear about BlackRock, you hear about Vanguard, and that's what they're actually doing. What can you do to offer an
Okay, Vanguard. Let's talk about Vanguard for a second. Vanguard has something called index funds, which means that their investments are based purely upon what companies are included in the S&P 500, the Standard & Poor's 500, or some other index. They are not actively managed funds. So what that means is that the people who manage those funds don't participate in anything in terms of the oversight of the businesses. They just make sure that their fund makeup matches the makeup of the Standard & Poor's 500 or some other index that it's based on. So they don't engage at all in this stuff. Again, talk about a red herring. Let's keep watching.
Alternative.
That's right. This is not somebody else's. This is not somebody else's money. This is your money. And nurses, doctors, small business owners, big business owners, they're aggregating the money of everyday citizens to speak on their behalf in most ways that most of those everyday citizens would actually disapprove of.
Yeah, in fact, the way most average everyday citizens would disapprove, like, for example, most average everyday citizens would like to see the oil companies not giving more money to the very wealthy investors and instead actually maybe producing at some of those thousands of oil leases that are going unused right now. Let's keep watching.
So what I think is the market actually needs competition. It needs added choice. That's a big part of why I founded Strive, Brian.
But the actual added choice was being denied to us by the Trump administration. It's the Biden administration that's actually trying to bring us added choice so that we're able to invest in socially responsible funds if we want to. Let's keep watching.
A big part of the mission, the first step of that mission, is to educate those everyday citizens about what's exactly happening with their money. So that's the educational campaign that starts on July 4th. That goes for the next 5 weeks thereafter. And I think once people know what's happening, then come the solutions thereafter.
All right, I understand it. So, Vivek, if I'm sitting there and I'm a member of a union, a workers' union, and they're investing in this, am I helpless?
No, I don't think you're helpless. I think beginning to speak up to those pension fund board members, being able to speak up to the union managers who are managing the money, many of them aren't even knowledgeable today because BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard, they've been exceptional at marketing to pension funds. Well, guess what? Those pension funds aren't supposed to serve BlackRock. They're supposed to serve their plan participants. So one of the things I hope to do across the country is to activate the people who have money in state pension funds, in union funds, to be able to ask the questions to say that actually, where is my money being invested? Who is speaking on my behalf? And if they're delivering messages to American energy companies that also cause me to pay more for gas and cause those companies to be less successful and the U.S. to lose energy independence, I want to have something to say about it.
30 seconds.
Okay, I love how they talk about union members. These people are opposed to unions. They're doing everything they can to undermine unions, make unions illegal, take away the power of unions to be able to bargain on behalf of its members. What's more is at this point, union members account for, about 6% of the U.S. workforce. So it's not by accident that they say union members here. They're trying to sow doubt in the minds of people from some kind of sense that the unions are looking out for them, which is they've been pretty successful at, I've got to say. Although of late, people I think have been coming to realize how little capitalism looks out for them and how they could sure use unions to stand up for them. Well, if you want to see how the Supreme Court has basically targeted unions, check out this video I made a little while ago over here. This has been a long-term strategy on the part of Republicans in the courts to decimate our unions. So don't believe Fox News when they act as if they're unions' friends. I'll see you then. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.